Okay, so here you can see the original sloper that I manipulated. Here's my now pattern piece. But our final stage is to add a facing, and this is going to be a self-facing. So it's nothing you sew in, it's going to hit this fold line right here. So fold along that line, which is the top of your neckline, and then you're going to look for your shoulder. It may take holding it up to the light to find it. And if it helps you can give a little bit of that armhole here, but really our main concentration will be just to reflect this part of your shoulder upward for our facing. So on a full scale sloper, you want this length here to be 5 inches. Again, we're working with quarter size. I'm just gonna give it, let's eyeball it, 5/8 looks perfect. So I'm squaring this up from this fold line. So this is what you're gonna see draped closest to your, like the face of your model, your wearer, or yourself. But this is what we want to fall inside. So you do have a very clean fold up against your face to frame your face. Now we do not want to add double the bulk into this shoulder. So I'm going to find the midpoint here in this area of the shoulder. So I know we're just kind of like dividing everything in half, and then we're gonna do it again. So in half again. So right about here. And we're gonna give it an ellipse shape. So just using a curve. You want this to be squared, and again, there's no magic point as to when to curve it. What feels natural to you and kind of what matches your ruler to create that the edge of the facing here. So I'm gonna write fold line here. There are 2 other things I'm gonna just note very quickly. For cowls, this absolutely can be cut on fold. And really that's what is suggested by the book. Probably if you were to buy a pattern from like McCall's, Butterick, something like that, it probably will be on fold, but it is not going to be with the lengthwise grain. So to get the most like substantial amount of drape, you want this to be on the bias. So you would have to take your material and fold your fabric on the bias, which is tricky to do. So I'll show you here one option, and then in the PDF to follow along, that will give you the second option. And it's what I prefer just because I'm just gonna mark lengthwise grain just so it's here, but don't use that. Anyway, I like to use a full front piece anytime I cut on the bias because I just feel like I have way more control over the grain line for the entire piece of fabric. Because you can see here, this is a lot going on, and it can definitely show if you've got half of your bodice on grain and the other half is a little bit altered. So bias cut. We'll just make another note here too. Let's do bias on fold. So from here you'll do seam allowances, if any. Like I said with my PDF, it shows a true reflection of the front. So I don't add any seam allowance to my front. But you'll add your 1/2 inch to your side seam, 1/2 inch to the armhole. I'm going to, anytime I work with something that's drapey, I like to do a very fine finish on my like armhole finishes, anything here. So even this will be rolled by hand, likely. So I will add a seam allowance here, but I call this out as my hem allowance. So I'll just write 1/2 inch H dot A dot to let me know that this is going to be a self-turn hem, and same here. So 1/2 inch hem allowance. And then this, you definitely want a 1/2 inch at your shoulder and very narrow. I give myself just 1/8 of an inch narrow turn hem here. And dependent on your fabric, if you've got a fine fabric, I do a hand rolled hem, but if you've got something that can, you know, go under the weight of the serger without tearing or snagging, then 1/8 of an inch is also absolutely acceptable here to do this serged rolled hem. So just mark your hem, seam allowances, and go ahead and give notches where appropriate. So definitely mark your side seams. Again, we're not setting in a sleeve. You can note where your mid sleeve is, but there's really no match point here. So it's not necessary to include a notch at your armhole, but definitely include a notch at your fold line. And then just to talk about back body very quickly. So we're gonna do another slash and pivot here. So I'm drawing up from this dart point to this mid armhole line. Let's do, where do I want to give this? I want to give it to my armhole. So we're going to close the waist dart. I've given to my armhole here. I'm not going to go into overdrive with this demo. I just don't want to take a ton of time. But you'll smooth this out. And then like we did on that original piece where we raised the armhole by 1/2 inch, we want to do the same here. So raise your armhole. And again, I'm talking full scale sloper. So I've given about 1/8 of an inch here. Blend it, match it down to your side seam, and smooth your bottom opening. And then you want to match your shoulder, so you can match or measure what you've got here for a shoulder. I've got about 5/8, which hits just shy of my dart. And I do want you guys to know, I'm gonna mark this in highlighter so it's easier to see. Keep it square for just a moment here, and then you can bring it over. And again, you want to keep it square at center back. So it's okay to just kind of run through this dart and reshape the neckline this way. Like you don't need to redistribute this dart. You can just run right through it. And then this piece will now match up to this piece at your side seam and your shoulder seam, creating a cowl tank top. And that's it.